So thank you both so much for being here. And I think I'm going to start off with just a very simple question to both of you. But before I do, I'd love for each of you to, you can go first, then you would have, but just introduce yourselves to the audience, a little bit more in detail.
I'm Cristina Mantilla. I am a co-founder of a ready-to-wear and jewelry brand that's unisex and started here in Miami, and it's called Eliou. My business partner would be here today, but she's not. She's out of the country, so it's just me representing both of us.
Hi everyone, my name is Uddhav Bagrodia. I'm co-founder of WASTEWEAR. We specialize in making all our products using only 100% recycled waste materials, which is primarily post-consumer and post-industrial cotton waste mixed with used plastic bottles, which is recycled into polyester. And we specialize in basic products for promotional purposes. We work with colleges, universities, corporates who want to make uniforms that are more sustainable. All the awesome bags you see here, they were made by us as well. So for events that talk about sustainability, offering them options that are away from the traditional products and actually use the waste that is created by making these traditional products.
So let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, right? And I love to hear the day one stories behind your entrepreneurship journey. I know that yours was unorthodox in some senses, right? So I'd love to hear a little bit about it.
So before I started my brand, I was actually doing something else. I was providing a service. I was doing a lot of creative direction, styling, set design, and prop styling. And I had my own small little agency here in Miami. And that was finally going well. I started that when I was about 25 years old, and just kind of like always been someone who works with my hands and loved, just always had a creative vision. And I used to provide a lot of different jewelry, or we'd hand make shoes or different things for different photo shoots and different clients depending on what they wanted. And so I was always a very crafty person. If you know me, that's what you know about me, and that's what you would say, not just about me, but about my business partner too. And her and I started making jewelry, and we started making jewelry by hand. And it started to pick up, and people started to like it, and friends and family wanted to buy it. And so at first we were just making pieces, and a lot of it was shell-based and pearls, and we were making more and more and more, and a lot of that was just because of the cathartic experience of what just working with your hands is like. And then it kind of got to the point where it was like leaving an opportunity on the table. And so we said, okay, we know how to build a website. My business partner is a photographer as well. We know how to style a shoot. I did a lot of photo shoot production. At this point, I'm about 28 years old, and so I've had over 4 years in just my creative agency, but over 10 years in creative work, period. And we went outside, we shot on a white wall, we did a line sheet, we built our own website. It's the same website we have today, and we kind of did everything from scratch, her and I. Graphic design, edited the photos, the whole thing. And before we even launched our website, I'm driving to our studio, and I get an email from what I've always was considered, or my clients considered, their Reach wholesale account, which was Net-a-Porter. And they asked me if I was going to be in Paris Fashion Week. And I thought it was an email blast because the title said, "Hello from Net-a-Porter." And I was just like, this is an email blast. And I was in my car, and I open it, and thinking nothing, I probably shouldn't have done it, but I was at a red light, and I remember exactly where I was, and I'll never forget it. And because it was a really pivotal moment. It really changed my life. And they asked if we were going to be in Paris Fashion Week, and I just started bawling, like crying and laughing so hard by myself in the car, because every client, other customer that I've worked for, this has always been their Reach. And so that's kind of how it started. And so I never thought that I was doing one thing, and I never thought that I would be doing something else, providing a product, nonetheless starting my own brand, and now we have a ready-to-wear line. And so there's just been a lot of growth in the past 4 years, because our brand is only 4 years old. And that's kind of the very unorthodox way our brand started. I didn't have a business plan, I didn't have an idea, I wasn't sitting on a concept. It really presented itself, and we have made the most of that, for sure.
I love that story. It's so good, crying and laughing. I could picture it. But I think that's amazing, and I think that's why I feel like it's either you come on to something that you feel is a problem and you try to solve it and you create a company out of it, or you're doing what you love and then the opportunity knocks and then you just go with it and then it becomes this huge thing. So I love that. And Uddhav, I'd love to hear about your entrepreneurial journey in starting Wastewear.
Absolutely. So I come from a traditional textile manufacturing background. I've grown up around textile factories, seeing yarn being spun and sweaters being knit. Along with that, I also saw the amount of waste that we created from the factory, which was just packed up into big sacks and, disposed of as any other traditional manufacturer would do. That's when the goal became to repurpose this waste and try to get something back from it. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we realized that we could actually reclaim this cotton and recycle this cotton to totally eliminate the production of virgin cotton, which is one of the most water-thirsty plants on this planet. So we're essentially closing the loop and not using any new material. So no new petroleum is used because no new polyester is used. We're just using the waste that we've already created, repurposing that back and taking it back into the loop. So that was the mission of the brand, is to not use any more new materials and to totally eliminate and offset the production that we're already doing for so many other brands. We're never going to stop using cotton. That's what I tell everyone. We're never not going to need cotton just because the way the material is. We're not going to stop using it. We just need to find better ways to use it. And technologies are growing very rapidly in terms of how the quality of the recycled cotton stays, because that's one of the major challenges in using these materials, is to respin the cotton, because it loses a lot of its properties once you recycle it. A lot of new technologies growing in terms of how to re-strengthen this cotton and make it feasible to use it more and more in larger quantities. A lot of brands out there are using organic cotton mixed with, some sort of recycled cotton, or even doing traditional virgin cotton mixed with organic cotton and calling it sustainable. I think we should readdress that, because there's many more new things that we're able to do today and actually offset growth of new cotton, which saves so much land, saves so much water, so many valuable resources. And then talking about polyester, no new petroleum is, we don't need new petroleum, we don't need any more chemicals to make this polyester out of petroleum, again, because we've already made plastic that we're gonna throw it into oceans or throw it into landfills. Instead of that, we can take it back into the loop and reclaim it. And there's so many studies about the amount of money that is saved just by using these waste materials, as opposed to trying to grow new cotton and make new polyester, because that's just creating more and more waste. And in this way, we can just close the loop and potentially not have any more new materials in the loop.
I love that. I remember when we first met and you showed me the materials and I was touching them, and knowing that I was touching waste that turned into this beautiful fabric, and I'm like, it's amazing. I'm a huge fan, both of you. So Christy, I have a question for you, and then I'm gonna bounce off a separate question, but in the same line for you, but it'll be like, you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. So the question to you that I have is, you've been featured in incredible publications, you've had this huge success with the brand. What has been the key to that success, as a brand coming out, early on and getting that email and then everything that happened after that?
Perseverance. Starting a brand without ever knowing that was going to happen, and doing so. Also, our brand kind of had this explosive moment during the pandemic, and we grew a lot. Whether you know the brand or you don't know the brand, for us it was a big pivotal moment. We grew so much. We had a lot of celebrity exposure over that time, and there was a lot of ups and downs. So for example, the beauty of being, asked if I was going to Paris Fashion Week and being picked up by like a pretty luxury account. But what comes after that is, how do you pay for it? How do you finance it? How do you produce it? How do you find the labor force for it? And how do you do that with a lead time of 3 to 4 months, when I never even knew that this is what I was going to do? And so a lot of that was, we've always had it. It's always been this hustle and drive, and you have to love what you do, and you have to be obsessed with your craft, and that is the only way that you'll continue growing. And so it's been my forefront. It's the only thing I think about. I go to bed, I dream about it. I spend a lot of time and effort, and so that perseverance and the hard work that goes into it is, there's many variables and many things, but I think above all, that's the biggest one, is just keep going. And so, and also being a little bit like creatively obsessed with seeing an idea come to fruition, and that's kind of what's always driven me to this industry. And so one collection turned into another idea, which turned into like a collaboration with a mirror company, with a collaboration with like other brands. And then now we have a ready-to-wear line because we didn't feel like we found the clothing that can match with the jewelry. And so all of that kind of perseverance and curiosity has been what's just kept us like growing and growing and doing it in what I feel has been very quick. And it's been great, yeah.
It's exciting. Congratulations. I feel like it's 3 big P's, right? It's passion, perseverance, and persistence, based on everything that you just said, which is amazing, and I totally believe in those values as well. And Uddhav, a separate question for you. I feel like, and I want to know what your thoughts are on this, but as you're growing wastewear and you're launching into the market, you know, with companies like yours that are so needed, but yet brands sometimes just don't quite figure out like why they need to jump on this so quick. Like, what would you say, how are you getting over those hurdles and getting attention from the brands? Because I feel like, you know, with what you're doing, it's like, and this is what I always say, I feel like all of the innovations for a brand to be sustainable throughout supply chain, they exist, right? If you really look, they exist, and a lot of them happen to be startup and scale-ups, but the brands have a really hard time adopting something unless other people have tried it first, and that's what really stops us from moving forward as an industry. So what would you say that you're trying to do with that?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of different things going on there. So one major thing is that brands, I talk to a lot of brands who are trying to become more sustainable. They're trying to rework the garments that they already have and saying, okay, here's what I have, how do I make this more sustainable? I think that's not the right way to think about it. We have to think about sustainable materials as new materials altogether and learn how to incorporate those in our offerings rather than trying to make what we have already sustainable. And why I say there's a couple of different things going on here because we can't think of sustainability in a garment after it's already been made or after it's already been designed. We have to think about it from the beginning itself, from where it's being made to how it's being made, who's making it, and what kind of materials you're using. And we have to learn how to work with these new materials. And us being very close to the manufacturing side, since we do the manufacturing ourselves, we see both sides of things. A lot of times, you know, brand buyers are based here in the States and the production happens all the way in Asia. We don't even realize the amount of waste that we're creating or what the new materials are that the factories are being able to offer. So I think there's a little bit of lack of education as well. Even for people who work in the fashion industry, don't exactly understand how yarn is made. No one is expected to know what goes behind the spinning process. But once you're able to learn about those things, you can actually see what's new out there. We had so many conversations today about new materials, including the new types of leather that's being created. So it's just that we have to now, another material I like to talk about is mycelium made of mushrooms, you know. It's not like these materials are replacing, for example, silk. It's not being replaced. This is a new material that brands need to now learn how to work with and design according to that. So I think that is one of the major things that brands need to readdress, is that instead of trying to change what you already have, they need to rethink and try to create something that's sustainable from the start itself and think about the entire life cycle, not just the consumption as well as the disposal of how this garment is going to be disposed. Theoretically, the garments that we are making, I say theoretically because we still haven't reached the stage where we've taken back that exact same product and recycled it, but that is also a possibility. Even though the end use of this garment, end use of this recycled fiber might change, you may not be able to get the same t-shirt out of the t-shirt you just recycled. It can always be made into lower grade products such as carpets, drapes, something that uses thicker yarns to make. So even though it's a little technical, brands need to restart from scratch and think about the sustainability of the garment and the entire life cycle of the garment before they even give the production order. If they've already given the order and then they're thinking about how to make this more sustainable, it's too late already.
That's my problem.
Well, we're always like, I know you use cotton, right? And like I said, cotton is not going anywhere. It's, at least for our lives, we will still be wearing cotton garments. We just have to figure out how to use it better. So many companies out there are working on re-strengthening the recycled cotton fiber, which is the main limitation of using recycled cotton, is to spin it back into yarn, which is the reason why we blend it with polyester. People are blending it with different things, but we're slowly reaching a point where we will be able to use 100% recycled cotton, which in my opinion is superb because that totally eliminates any new cotton production. something that uses a lot of land, a lot of water, a lot of energy, a lot of labor, and then it's shipped across all over the world. But there's just waste everywhere. We're creating waste as consumers. This country consumes the highest amount of goods, but the production doesn't happen here. So it's post-consumer waste. Other countries are producing so much post-industrial waste. So there's just waste everywhere, and plastic waste is never ending. Like I don't think we'll ever run out of plastic bottles to recycle. So there's very different things happening. It's just that brands need to actually go out there and try to understand what are the new materials they can work with.
Can I just jump off that? Okay, so we had like a call before this, and we had spoken and stuff. And so what my experience, so my brand a little bit more, and why I'm sitting up here and we're talking about sustainability and not just entrepreneurship. So like, for example, what I'm wearing is dead stock doilies that was hand stitched together, and we've made less than 20 units of both top and bottom, and that's pretty much across the board for all the clothing we make. It's not mass produced. We don't make more than 20 units per piece. And if it's a crochet style, we do 100% crochet. It's handmade, and it is made of 100% cotton. And so I'm learning throughout this process too, right? So where we were we were a brand that had a purchase order before I even knew how I was going to make the product, and then I have now figured that part out. But that's kind of where me and my experience has been as a brand and working to be. So our jewelry is also how we used to do it to be sustainable was we were made to order, and so we never overproduced anything outside of what we knew was going to be worn and purchased by someone. It works until it doesn't work because it's difficult to scale. And then we got into the ready-to-wear, and so where we started with jewelry first, and we were intentional, but we were also trying to start a business, and me, and as a 28-year-old who knew what she wanted but didn't really know what she was doing and had to learn how to operate, and basically we run like a very mini factory here in Miami because our jewelry is still made by hand and it's still done here, and we're not made to order, but that's how we were able to try and make it as sustainable as possible. Now we're hand making our own beads, and so we're trying to take steps backwards as we've been able to kind of overcome obstacles of learning how to run a business and trying to learn more about sustainability. And so we've expanded into clothing, and this was a more intentional route for us where we had a little bit more time. We didn't have a wholesale order. We don't have, this crazy pending demand that we have to turn in by a cancel window and all this stuff, or a delivery. And we are direct to consumer now. We only sell to our customers because it gives us the freedom to be able to learn with what we're doing. And so yes, our product is handmade. We only use dead stock fabric. And even though you say it starts with the material first, it's such a learning experience even for me up here as I have a business and I'm starting something and I'm trying to find alternatives out there because we're trying to do the best we can and be as responsible as possible. But there's just so much room for growth, and I can't wait for someone like you. And we talked about this, and we're gonna have a call tomorrow, and I'm just like, how can we, thread and 100% cotton and have that being recycled? And when those alternatives become available to a small brand like mine, where I don't have a heavy MOQ, I can't wait to see what happens because there's just so much opportunity.
If I could just respond to that, absolutely. They use dead stock, which is, if you're not familiar with this, this is fabric that's been left over or yarn that's been left over from a large production order. This itself tells you that brands are the ones creating waste. Like brands that produce on such a large scale, first, they don't think about the materials. Secondly, there's so much waste being created that there's companies like this that are literally growing out of the waste that's being created. So that just tells you how scalable this really is and how brands like ours are trying to offset the production that all these traditional brands are doing. Just wanted to say that.
I feel like I'm watching a collaboration form here. I'm really excited. This is why we do what we do. This is the best. So really, I was just going to ask you the next question, which was going to be around sustainability, which you both answered. And I love that you said sustainable as possible, that you're learning, and that you're being open about it, instead of coming and saying, like, I'm going to say I'm sustainable, and like just being really open about it, because this is where information gets shared. This is where collaborations are possible. And that's really the key to sustainability. I always say it's not about to get everything right in one shot, but it's about connecting with the right people to start taking steps toward what that near future goal is going to be. But go ahead.
I think it's really difficult for someone to come up here and say we are a 100% sustainable brand or we are super eco-friendly when we all have access to information and greenwashing and, you know, I'm a vegan, this is like my choice to try and help the environment and I'm trying to be sustainable by using dead stock fabric, but we try to be responsible, right? So we're trying to be responsible with our product and I'm trying to learn about sustainability and how I can bring it back to my brand. And if I'm being super honest, I'm trying to do that while also learn how to operate and scale with when we're in that 5 year where they say you're in Desert Valley and starting your brand. Luckily, we're doing great, we're growing, we're in a wonderful space, we have a store in New York now, and so, but at the same time, it's like we're trying to learn too, and there's just, it would be a lot for someone to come up here and say we are 100% sustainable, at least as a brand, like someone who's producing clothing or I haven't seen one yet.
No, thank you.